The knock came hard and fast, shattering the silence of the penthouse like a thunderclap. Ethan Blake looked up from his laptop, brows furrowing at the interruption. In his world, where every minute was pre-scheduled and accounted for, no one showed up without an appointment. "Mr. Blake," the concierge's voice crackled through the intercom, hesitant. "There's a young woman at the front desk. She says she needs to speak with you. It's urgent." "I don't take unannounced visitors," Ethan replied coldly, turning back to the draft email on his screen. "Sir," the concierge's voice dropped to a murmur. "She's holding a baby, and she says the baby is yours." His hand froze midair. The words echoed in his head like a delayed explosion. A minute later, he was stepping into the private elevator, expression unreadable. When the lobby doors slid open, she was there. A woman in her late 20s, sun-kissed skin, wild black curls pulled back casually, her gaze unwavering and bold. In her arms, a newborn slept peacefully, wrapped in a light blue blanket. "Ethan Blake?" she asked, though her eyes said she already knew. "And you are?" "Claire Ramirez, Sophia's sister." The name, Sophia, landed in Ethan's chest like a boulder. Ethan froze. That name, Sophia, still held a weight of memories he had long since buried in the darkest corner of his mind. He stepped closer, eyes moving from Claire to the infant in her arms. His face betrayed no emotion, only the practiced coldness honed through years of negotiations and control. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked, voice low and even. "No, this is your son." Claire didn't flinch, her voice firm. "Sophia died giving birth to him 3 weeks ago." A tightness gripped Ethan's chest, but he didn't let it show. He crossed his arms, eyes narrowing with skepticism. "We broke up over a year ago. Sophia and I, we were done." "Yes. After you discarded her like she was an inconvenience." "Don't blame me for her choices." Claire paused a second, then said evenly, "She called you dozens of times, begged for a conversation, begged you to listen. You know she wasn't someone who gave up easily." Ethan didn't answer. "Did you ever wonder why she suddenly disappeared? Why she stopped calling?" Claire's words came sharp and deliberate, each one a cut. He stared at her, unable to argue with the truth blazing in her eyes. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. The pain she carried for her sister spoke louder than any volume. "And now you stand there acting like the victim, while your son sleeps in my arms, motherless. And if I hadn't come here today, then what? You'd never have known? Don't talk to me like I'm some bastard." "You are, Ethan," Claire snapped, "but you still have a chance not to stay that way." Silence fell between them. Only the soft breaths of the sleeping baby filled the room. Ethan turned away, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles went pale. "I need proof," he said at last. "I have it." Claire pulled a crumpled envelope from her bag. She slid out a birth certificate. Under "Father," the name Ethan Blake was printed clearly. "And this," she added, holding out a simple silver necklace, engraved with 3 small initials, SSB-Sophia Elise Blake. "That was her last birthday gift from you. She wore it all the way to the delivery room." Ethan looked at the keepsake as if it suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. Memories rushed in. Sophia's radiant smile when she opened the box, her warm eyes never leaving his. He sank slowly onto the nearest chair, eyes lost. The baby stirred softly. Claire held him closer, her voice gentler now. "His name is Noah, and whether you believe me or not, I didn't come to cause problems. I came to deliver him to the father he deserves." Ethan said nothing after Claire left. She had placed the birth certificate and necklace on his coffee table and walked out without another word. He remained frozen, sitting in the sun-drenched penthouse that somehow felt colder than ever. He had always controlled everything: contracts, shares, media, markets. But a 3-week-old baby, a tiny being barely the size of his palm, was shaking his world to the core. The next morning, Ethan contacted the most reputable genetics lab in New York. The test was processed as a priority. Claire returned hours later, this time silent, offering no arguments, no demands. Only her eyes asked a question: can you handle the truth if it's real? They sat together in the lounge. Noah slept soundly on Claire's chest. Ethan didn't look at the child, but he could hear every soft breath, every tiny shift like the brush of a feather. "How long for results?" Claire asked quietly. 24 hours, Ethan replied, his eyes locked on his phone screen, though he couldn't read a word. The waiting felt like punishment. When the envelope finally arrived, Ethan didn't open it immediately. He held the crisp white paper, fingers squeezing hard enough to wrinkle it. Claire stood by without a word. Noah slept peacefully, his little hand curled around the edge of his blanket. Ethan tore open the envelope. One line jumped out instantly. Genetic compatibility probability 99.9%. The room shrank around him. No sound, no light, just the undeniable truth staring him down. He was the father of this child. "Oh my God," he whispered, slowly letting the paper fall from his hand. He looked up at Claire, for the first time truly seeing her, not as an intruder, but as an inescapable part of this new reality. Claire said nothing, she only nodded. "I need time," Ethan said, voice rough, like it had never been used for something honest before. "There isn't much time, Ethan," she replied, cradling Noah to her chest. "I go back to work in 3 days. I can't raise him alone, not when his father is capable of helping. Maybe you didn't expect him, but he's here. He's your blood." Ethan didn't answer right away. He just sat there, staring at Noah. Pink cheeks, soft breath, terrifying peace. A living, breathing part of him. "We need to talk," he whispered at last. Ethan tore his eyes away from Noah as if waking from a trance. There was a strange tightness in his chest, not exactly fear, but far from calm. He had never imagined himself with a child, certainly not like this. "What do you expect to happen now?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady, though his breath was uneven. "I've done everything I could," Claire replied. "I handled Sophia's funeral. I registered Noah's birth. I've taken care of him alone for 3 weeks, not knowing what I was doing. And now I have to return to work." She looked him square in the eyes. "I didn't come here to force you to love him. I came because of a promise I made to my sister before she went into labor." Ethan leaned back, pressing his fingers to his forehead. "I don't know how to be a father. I never even considered the idea." "No one does," Claire said gently, "but some people choose to learn." Silence fell between them again. Noah breathed softly, unaware that his life was being negotiated. Ethan glanced at Claire, then said slowly, "You and the baby can stay here. Temporarily, until I figure this out." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Temporarily? For how long?" 3 months, he answered, his voice as firm as if he were signing a business deal. "I'll learn what I need to. Then we'll decide what's best for Noah." Claire paused, then nodded. "All right, 3 months. But I'm not your maid. I don't run on your schedule. And I won't let Noah become just another thing you try to control." Ethan didn't argue. He simply nodded, his gaze losing some of its usual sharpness. "And I want one more thing," Claire added. "What is it?" "You don't get to outsource this. No nurses, no nannies. For these 3 months, you learn to be a father yourself. No one else can teach you how to care. Only Noah can." Ethan hesitated a moment, then nodded slowly. "Fine," he said. 3 months. Claire clutched Noah closer, like she was holding on to the last sliver of hope. "We can put it all in writing if that's what you need," she added. "I live by contracts," Ethan replied, the corner of his mouth twitching into a humorless smile. "At least they keep things in bounds." Claire gave a small chuckle. "Your son doesn't know what bounds are, Ethan. He'll teach you that." Ethan paced slowly across the living room, hands in his pockets, eyes never leaving the baby asleep on the couch. Claire sat beside Noah, back straight like she was waiting for a formal interview, but her eyes held no plea. She had done her part. Now it was his turn. "What do you want me to do?" Ethan asked, voice calm but lower than usual. "It's not about what I want," Claire answered. It's about what Noah needs. He needs a father, not someone who's good at signing checks. Ethan exhaled, walking toward the window, looking out at the city stretching below, a world he could control. But this room, with Claire and the baby, was beyond reach. "You can stay here," he said after a long pause, "temporarily." Claire raised an eyebrow. "How long is temporary?" 3 months. I need time to figure this out, to understand where I stand in all this. "And after 3 months?" she asked. "We decide together, based on what I've learned, based on what's best for Noah." Claire nodded slowly. 3 months, but on one condition. You don't hand this off to someone else. No nannies, no assistants, just you and the baby. Ethan turned around, giving her a look as if she'd asked the impossible. "Claire, I'm a CEO. I run a corporation. An entire empire depends on me. And Noah is your son. An entire life depends on you. You want to understand this? Start by changing a diaper yourself." Ethan paused. A part of him wanted to argue, as he always did when someone questioned his authority. But this wasn't a rival. It was a child, and the woman who brought him into Ethan's life. "Fine," he said, voice low. 3 months. No nanny. Claire exhaled, not out of relief, but because finally they'd taken one step, however small, toward each other. "And I'm not a guest," she added. "I'll contribute, housework, baby care, whatever, but I don't live under your orders. I don't work for you. We're two adults sharing responsibility, not a boss and an employee." Ethan nodded, understood. They sat in silence for a few seconds. Noah stirred, made a tiny sound, then fell right back asleep. Ethan looked at the baby again, this time more carefully. A familiar forehead, a stubborn strand of hair that curled the same way as his. Something soft shifted in his chest, something he couldn't yet name. "We'll need a clear agreement," he said at last. "I figured," Claire smiled slightly, "and I'm not signing if you sneak in unfair clauses." The first 3 days felt like a tornado ripping through the penthouse, once pristine enough for magazine covers. The printed schedule on the fridge, useless. Warnings from his assistant about missed meetings, endless. The scent of formula and baby wipes replaced the high-end cedarwood cologne Ethan once adored. Noah cried at 2 a.m., then again at 4. Ethan sprang up out of reflex, eyes half shut. Claire stood beside him, hair a mess, holding a bottle, smiling softly at the sight of the cold real estate mogul, fumbling with trembling hands. "Not that much. You're feeding a human, not watering a plant," she teased. He gave her a tired glare, but didn't argue. Instead, he took the bottle, sat down, and attempted to hold Noah as if he were cradling a priceless artifact. "You're not the first person he's defeated," Claire said, gently adjusting his grip, "but you'll get the hang of it." Ethan glanced up at her, something like gratitude flickering faintly in his eyes. Daytime wasn't any kinder. A crucial call with Tokyo had to be cut short because Noah was fussy. Ethan joined a Zoom meeting with a milk stain blooming across his crisp white shirt. His partners stifled their laughs. Ethan didn't. "We're undergoing transitional adjustments," he muttered, straightening the webcam and quietly lifting Noah off the keyboard. Claire didn't comment, but her eyes spoke volumes, equal parts restraint and silent admiration. By day 5, Ethan had begun to realize there was no schedule for newborns. They cried when they wanted, slept when they were bored, and always picked the worst moment to pee on whoever held them. That night, after Noah finally fell asleep, Ethan sat beside Claire on the couch, both too tired to speak. She rested her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. His hand brushed hers accidentally, and for a fleeting second, neither pulled away. In that stillness, without a word, something shifted between them. "My life is completely upside down," he groaned one night while trying to warm a bottle to the perfect temperature. "Good," Claire replied. "Means you're finally living it." Ethan was beginning to settle into the rhythm of midnight feedings and chaotic afternoons. But just as he found a strange calm in this new normal, the real storm hit. On Friday afternoon, the elevator doors slid open to the sharp click of high heels. Vanessa Coleman entered, dressed in an ivory suit, her hair in flawless waves, eyes like blades, wrapped in velvet. "Ethan," she said with a smile, "sweet and cold like honey laced with poison. You haven't replied to my messages." Ethan rose from the couch, instinctively glancing toward Claire, who was rocking Noah gently to sleep. "Vanessa, you didn't call." "I never had to," she interrupted, scanning the room until her gaze landed on the freshly assembled crib in the corner. She walked closer. "What's this? Someone moved in?" Claire stood slowly. "Hello, I'm Claire." "Oh?" Vanessa's smile sharpened. "And you are—" "Sophia's sister," Claire said evenly. "And Noah's aunt. He's Ethan's son." The air froze solid. Vanessa turned to Ethan, her face cracking for just a second before reassembling into something calm and manufactured. "This is a joke, right?" she whispered. "A baby? Sophia's been dead for months." "She died 3 weeks ago," Claire said, giving no room for denial. "During childbirth." Vanessa took a step back, as if slapped. Then she laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "So this is why you disappeared? For this?" She nodded toward the baby. "This has a name," Claire said coldly, "and he's the child of the man you plan to marry." Ethan stepped forward, placing himself between them. "That's enough, Vanessa." "Oh, I'm just getting started," she said, voice dropping low. "Do you have any idea how much this will ruin you? Your shareholders, the press, the board, everyone will find out." "What are you planning?" Ethan asked. "I'm simply saying, if someone should be this child's guardian, it's me, not someone like her." She glanced at Claire like she was dirt on polished marble. Claire didn't flinch. "You're not family. You're just a failed PR campaign wrapped in branding and performance metrics." Vanessa's grip on her purse tightened. Ethan looked at them both, and for the first time, he saw the contrast clearly. One stood for image, the other for truth. And he stood between two worlds, knowing full well he couldn't keep both. When the door closed behind Vanessa, the silence that followed was thick with the smoke of a storm not yet past. Claire held Noah a little tighter while Ethan walked to the bar, poured a glass of water, and let it sit untouched. His hands trembled. "She's not going to stop," Claire said, voice calm but resolute. "She's the kind who turns a child into a tool if it gets her further." "Vanessa is strategic," Ethan replied as if defending her, even though he didn't believe it himself anymore. "Strategy doesn't belong here," Claire snapped. "This is about blood, about family." Ethan sat down, hands clasped in front of him. "There's something I haven't told you." Claire looked up, eyes wary. "Sophia left a will. I only got the copy after her death. And there's a clause." He paused, lowering his voice. "If I marry someone she trusted, someone who truly loves Noah, I could retain legal guardianship." "And if you don't?" Claire asked. "Guardianship passes to whoever she named. I recently found out someone altered the documents, made it seem like Vanessa was that person." Claire went still. "She forged a will? And if this goes to court, Vanessa could win," Ethan said tightly, "unless I act first." Claire tightened her hold on Noah. "What are you suggesting?" Ethan stood silent, hands in his pockets, as the pieces fell into place. Noah, Sophia's will, Claire's fire. He had never believed in fate, but in this moment, something bigger than strategy whispered, "Protect what matters." Ethan looked up, his ice-dew eyes steady. "We get married." She laughed, not because it was funny, but because she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. "You're serious?" "Completely. If we're married, I can challenge the forged will and reinforce Sophia's true intentions." "And then what? Divorce in 6 months? Live in a 20-room mansion and never speak again?" "That's not the plan. I don't know where this leads, but I know this. I won't let Vanessa take Noah, not at any cost." Claire studied him for a long time, as if trying to see through every layer he had ever built around himself. "This is a marriage of convenience, Ethan, a contract." "That's how I start things," he replied, but it's not how I intend to finish them." Claire never said yes, and Ethan never said, "I promise." But a few days later, on a breezy spring morning, they walked into City Hall, not for love, but for a child, and perhaps for something they couldn't yet name. The wedding happened quietly on Monday morning, inside a sterile conference room at City Hall. Claire wore a simple white dress she'd bought last minute from a corner store. Ethan wore a charcoal suit, his expression more suited to a corporate merger than a wedding. No flowers, no blessings, just swift procedures and a curt nod from a bored clerk. "Rings?" the officiant prompted. Ethan silently pulled a small blue box from his jacket pocket. Claire's eyes widened. Rings hadn't been part of the discussion. Inside was a plain silver band with a single small diamond. Elegant, modest, unpretentious. "I picked it this morning," he murmured, avoiding her gaze. "Felt like there should be something to remember." Claire slid the ring onto his hand. Her fingers trembled. "By the authority granted by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife," the woman announced, stamping their license with a final thud. "You may kiss the bride." They froze, as if that part hadn't been in the contract. Ethan leaned in. Claire closed her eyes. Their lips met, soft as breath, but in that brief moment, something slipped through, something unspoken, as if the lines, the logic, the legalities all blurred. When they stepped out onto the street, sunlight touched the pavement. Claire glanced at the man walking beside her, not a husband in the romantic sense, but no longer a stranger. And in that fleeting second she realized the real danger wasn't the marriage. It was what their hearts weren't ready for. They say things that begin with agreements often end in misunderstandings. Just weeks after their rushed wedding, amid the soft rustle of the artificial pond in the estate's garden, Claire quietly packed her bags. Ethan returned from a meeting to find her folding her clothes with the precision of someone preparing for a long trip. The room shrank as their eyes met. "Where are you going?" His voice wasn't loud, but it cracked. Claire didn't meet his gaze. "Someone planted Amanda's diamond necklace in my dresser drawer." Ethan froze. "You think I—" "No," she cut in. "I know you didn't. But she's calling the police, and I won't wait until it spirals out of control." Noah's cry echoed from upstairs. Claire paused, then quickly scooped him from his crib, gently rocking him. "I'm leaving. But don't worry, I won't take him. I'll leave him with you, at least until this mess is cleared up." "You're not going anywhere." Ethan stepped forward, voice low but firm. "This is your home." Claire gave a bitter laugh. "This is your world, Ethan. I'm just a nameless guest in a story I'll never truly understand." He wanted to stop her, to say it was all a misunderstanding, that Amanda was just grasping at whatever power she had left. But Claire didn't wait for him. She walked out the door, leaving behind the pristine white mansion like an empty sheet of paper. That night, Ethan sat alone in Noah's nursery beside the empty crib. Every contract, every plan, every logical structure he once trusted, none of it could keep the one woman who had ever made him feel truly alive. 3 days after Claire left, Ethan went to Amanda. She was seated at the bar of her usual upscale hotel, surrounded by familiar corporate faces. Her smile froze when she saw him, then curled into something bitter. "Oh, Ethan, here to thank me for freeing you from that little act?" He said nothing, just placed a manila envelope on the bar. Amanda glanced at it, eyes narrowing. "Another contract?" "No," Ethan replied coldly. "It's footage from the security cameras at the estate, showing exactly who entered Claire's room and who planted the necklace." She stiffened, confidence drained from her face. "You were spying on me?" "No, I was protecting the people in my home." Amanda forced a dry laugh. "For her, a woman you married just to keep the baby?" "No. For the woman who's the mother of my son. And the first person to love me without needing the name Ethan Blake." Amanda stood, her voice sharp. "You'll regret this." "Not as much as you will." He turned and walked away, never looking back. Later that day, Claire received a message. The cameras told the truth. Ready to hear an apology yet? She stared at the words for a long moment, not because he apologized, but because, finally, he had chosen to protect what truly mattered. Claire stood before the mansion gates. The tall black iron still looked as imposing as the day she left, but today it didn't feel cold. It felt like it had been waiting. She rang the bell. Within 10 seconds, the door opened. Ethan stood there, sleeves rolled up, face tired but eyes shining. "I didn't think you'd come," he breathed, as if releasing something heavy. Claire met his gaze. "I didn't think I'd return either, but some things don't let go that easily." He welcomed her in. The living room looked the same, except for one small frame on the table. A photo of Claire holding Noah, framed in silver. "I want you to know," Ethan said, voice low, "since the day you walked out that door, I haven't thought about a single contract." She smiled faintly. "Good, because I didn't come to renegotiate." A quiet moment passed. Not tense, just the stillness of two people trying to heal. Ethan stepped closer. "Claire, you don't know how much you've changed me. You made me see everything I used to dismiss: family, emotion, real presence." She watched him intently. "You only say that because I left." "No, I say it because I want you to stay. Not for Noah, for you." Claire said nothing, but her eyes glistened. He took out a small ring box. Nothing flashy, no theatrics. No contracts, no terms, just me, risking everything to keep you. If you're willing to start over, from the very beginning, no rush. She opened the box, a simple, elegant ring. She didn't answer right away, but instead of words, she reached for his hand. "Let's start with dinner. I'm starving." That dinner had only pasta, salad, and an already open bottle of wine from the fridge. No flowers, no candlelight, no background music. But to Claire, it was the warmest dinner she'd ever had. Because for the first time, they weren't strangers sharing a roof. 3 months later, the mansion was no longer quiet. Noah's laughter echoed through the halls, sometimes louder than Ethan's voice on business calls. Claire had moved her workspace to the ground floor, quiet enough to write, close enough to hear when Noah cried. Ethan kept his office upstairs, but sometimes vanished from Zoom calls just to hold his son for a moment. They didn't call each other husband or wife. There were no whispered "I love yous" in the hallway or sweet kisses before bed. But there was familiarity in the silence, the way Claire made the exact tea Ethan liked, or how he always folded a soft blanket and left it ready for her chair before she nursed Noah. One rainy afternoon, as the three of them sat reading in the living room, Claire looked at Ethan longer than usual. "I used to think I didn't belong here," she said softly. "That this house wasn't meant for me." Ethan put his book down, took her hand gently. "Because I never let anyone belong," he replied, "until you." Claire rested her head on his shoulder. Outside, the rain fell quietly. Noah slept soundly on his mother's lap, one tiny hand still clinging to the page of a half-read book. And in that moment, they weren't two people holding on to a marriage out of duty. They were a family. Imperfect, but real. A year later, Ethan sold the penthouse, a symbol of his success and of his loneliness. In its place, he bought a small plot of land by the sea, the same place Sophia once dreamed of. "If I ever get to rest," she had said, "I want to build a little hotel, not a place to escape, but a place where people come to find themselves." Claire held the old sketch Sophia had once drawn. The lines were rough, dreamy. Now, they were blueprints for something real. Together, they built the hotel, modest but full of warmth. Raw wood, golden sunlight, the smell of the ocean drifting through every window. On opening day, Ethan handed Claire a small key and a partner certificate. "Not just in business," he said, "in life." Claire didn't cry, but her eyes said everything. That evening, the three of them walked along the beach. Noah ran ahead, leaving tiny footprints in the sand. Ethan and Claire strolled behind, hand in hand. Family isn't something you inherit. It's something you build, choice by choice, day by day, through every small act of love. And as the waves whispered against the shore, 3 sets of footprints stretched behind them. Messy, imperfect, real. This wasn't the end of their story. It was the moment they began writing it. Together.